You okay? Yeah. Okay. You all right? Okay, let's come together as a group. I've tried to be neutral and with all these different terms, taking so that it's not particularly loaded one way or another as a teaching group. So let's begin with who wants to begin with the term? Should we begin with? Go on.
We were thinking about Russiagate.
Yep.
And a couple of the things that we picked out is that it paints as if like that whole country was responsible for it. If we had done the same thing to Australia, I don't want to be called British Gate. I have no desire to be associated with any of the people who did it. It wasn't me. Why can't we call it Putin Gate or something?
Yes, that's a very good point, actually. Yeah, so it might not really be a strong enough term. It might be a too broad a term.
Yeah.
Just remind us what Russiagate is for
Interfering in 2016.
The idea that Russia secretly interfered with the American elections in 2016, but also the whole general idea that Russia has an influence over Donald Trump personally. Maybe they've got dirt on him. The idea that they, which seems very implausible to me, but the idea that Russia has an impact on American politics on a day-to-day basis and has done for at least the last 8 or 9 years.
And another thing that we sort of talked about was the suffix gate and the use of it.
Yeah.
So commonly. Remember when we were all accidentally eating horse meat back in 2015? Horse gate.
Yeah.
I mean, equivocating that with certain democracies.
Yes, absolutely. So again, I'm trying not to make any particular on-the-ground judgment about what happened with Russia and so on. I think most people don't really seriously believe that Trump is being blackmailed on a personal level. But to call the theory, at least, is incredibly serious. The idea that Vladimir Putin is able to control and basically dictate the world's leading democracy. If that is true, and you call it Russiagate, like as if it's a horse meat scandal.
It was a pretty big deal, though.
It was a fairly big deal. We don't call the Second World War Hitlergate. It's a casual term. It's a mediaized term. So again, I'm not saying it's true. I don't have a great deal of truck with the Russian interference idea anyway. But for those people who do believe it, you calling it something like Russiagate is really dismissive. I have my old postgraduate supervisor. I called Professor Lucas from University of Birmingham. He doesn't. I talked to him about this years ago because we're quite different, really, with our sort of political takes on things these days internationally. Even though I love him and he's a brilliant professor, but he said you shouldn't even be using that term. Why would you use that term? It's the Russian interference in the 2016 elections. Don't use Russiagate. It's not something casual. This is a horrendous thing. There was a collusion, or at least you can't really say there was collusion because there wasn't really, but there was some form of heavy Russian involvement in the undermining of an incredibly important democratic process, which has led to not only the subversion of democracy, but wars and all sorts of things. So it's a controversial term. But at the same time, like you say, it's also a little bit dismissing all of Russian people. It's a little bit of a xenophobic term as well. So it's kind of works the other way as well. Anyone got anything else to say on Russiagate? Okay, second one. Let's leave Russian talking points. It's a slightly more awkward. Well, maybe someone's got one for that. And what do you want to say about Russian talking points? Yeah, go on.
I saw that it sort of depended on the outlet. So, for example, the New York Times would say Kremlin talking points.
Good, yeah. Brilliant.
And it's come back into usage now because of what Trump said about Zelensky being a dictator, and then not using that against Putin. He was like, "Oh, I'm very careful about how I use the terminology."
Yeah.
And he called Zelensky a dictator.
Yeah, it's funny. Donald Trump saying, "Yeah, I'm very careful about the way I use the terminology dictator." Literally 2 days after he's called Zelensky a dictator. It's incredible. But Kremlin talking points sounds pretty sinister, doesn't it? It's quite an allegation to sort of say you are utilising Kremlin talking points. Any other points about this one? Why else is it controversial to use it? So why does it why does it seem controversial? Why is it provocative? Go on.
It seems like it's a list of problems that we need to sit down to discuss. So that's our problematic.
Yeah, it's like a list of problems. What is it? Yeah, kind of. I think. But what do we mean when we say someone is using Russian talking points? Go on.
It implies they're sort of allowing Russia to set the agenda.
Set the agenda. Yes. So if again, I just want to make sure people actually understand what this means. The idea that Russia can set the agenda. If I am telling you, and I'm sure it would happen, that people would say, if they were so politically motivated, that I am, I'm trying to think of an example now, I might have said something about, I don't know, I might have said something vaguely not demonising Vladimir Putin at some point. You could say, Matthew Alford is using Russian talking points. Or, what would it be? If this term, unprovoked, if I said, maybe it was provoked, I don't know. Like, you could say that I'm using Russian talking points because that's what Russia has, an idea that Russia has put out there to set the agenda. Yeah.
You know, it's what happened back in the kind of 70s, 80s with the Soviet and the Cold War, with America calling anyone that kind of had any leftist socialist things communist.
Yes. It is like what happened in the Cold War with academics and commentators and filmmakers or whoever it is being called communists and being lumped into that bracket of, you are using communist talking points. You're using Kremlin, the Kremlin's agenda. There's another term which I haven't put up here, which is the term useful idiots. Have you come across this one? What does useful idiots mean? Did you want to say? Professor Max Blumenthal from Grayzone and Professor David Miller, who used to be in SPS in this department, arrested last night on the way back from Nasrallah's funeral, Hezbollah funeral in Beirut. So Max Blumenthal arrested last night, journalist for the Grayzone. Professor David Miller, who used to work at this university and then went to University of Bristol, really senior guy, both arrested last night. Because why? They're kind of Russian. They are people who are accused of using Russian talking points. In the case of David Miller, he went to the Hezbollah leader's funeral and was coming back from that. And so they can be presented as, in a different society, they'd be, they're just academics and journalists, but they can be presented in these negative terms as well. You can imagine all these things are rather awkward to talk about. But bumped into these people a few times in my life, and don't want to say anything too dubious about any of it. But yeah, so they can be presented in those terms. So that's what I was going to say. Useful idiots. Those people are often referred to as useful idiots. It's a spy term. It comes from MI6. For 100 plus years, you probably find it on the Ngram charts, where the term useful idiots is used to say, that's an academic or a commentator, journalist, filmmaker, whatever it is. They are doing the bidding of the Russians. They are doing the bidding of the Iranians. They are doing the bidding of Beijing. They are useful idiots for those evil regimes. And that is the same thing that was happening. That term was coined during the wars of the 20th century and was popularized during the Cold War. Why might unprovoked be we'll have a break in about 5 minutes. Why might unprovoked be a good one for controversy? I was particularly thinking of the war in Ukraine. I mean, this is the... Yeah, go on. Anyone? I guess this is kind of more obvious one. The question is, was there provocation in... what is the history of that conflict? Did history begin in February 2022, or was there a kind of a history before that that had an impact on Putin's decision to go into Ukraine? Again, very difficult to know unless you're a historian of that particular region. But we're talking about those areas. We're talking about those. We're talking about these themes. It doesn't particularly matter to me or to the department or whatever which way you come down on that in terms of what's happening in the real world. But we just want you to engage in how important is it that these kind of terms are played with by different people. October the 7th, again. Go on, Grace. It makes it sound like history began on October the 7th, 2023. There was something going on before that. I guess I think you're probably very good on Gaza at the moment. You kind of know the background there. But obviously there was an occupation going on for, however you want to see it, for years or decades. You know, it's at least debatable as to whether October the 7th should be used as the sort of central date for all things to do with Israel-Palestine. Yeah.
I also think there's a broader thing about, you refer to 9/11.
Yes. Yes.
It's sort of like we like to, again, it's like putting a gate on the end of it.
Yeah.
We like using those terms. It's very
Yeah.
easy for like the media to refer to it. It's like that simplification of language. Just like you say, everything started on to the same.
Yeah, and it makes a kind of West-centric or Judeo-Christian-centric worldview. Now, in a way, sometimes you might think, well, it's wholly appropriate. I mean, look what happened. 9/11 was, you could compare 9/11 to other atrocities if you like. And there certainly have been other atrocities that have killed more people. But have they killed more people in such a spectacular mediated event and in such a dramatic way? So it's quite difficult to compare these things, and it's all up for interpretation. But nonetheless, it is West-centric. Chomsky didn't do it quite this crudely. I don't mean it like this, but there were, in 1998, the United States bombed Sudan, and I think it was the CIA or the State Department, I think, estimated that by bombing Sudan, just a pinprick strike, but they bombed their medical facility. They bombed the factory that created all of the pills for that country. And the official estimate from the United States, that they probably resulted in the death of 10,000 people. Chomsky pointed out, well, they killed 3,000 people on 9/11. We just killed 10,000 people just the other day without anyone even batting an eyelid. We just did an airstrike and that was that. So, anyway, you know what I'm saying, I think. Yeah, and this attempt, I guess just to link in with what happened with, so just to explain, Max Blumenthal, Grey Zone, is a really well-known journalist now, quite prominent. And David Miller is a really prominent figure in our country because he was fired